Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want you fired up about our author. His name is Sohail Malik, and we're talking about his book, Believe. Now come on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. I am so excited to have you on the show today, Sohail. Thank you so much for being a guest on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
You're most welcome, Dr. Angela. It's very kind of you to host me.
Absolutely. Now, I cannot wait to talk to you about your book, but as is tradition here on the show, we always give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves to perhaps those few people out there that are unfamiliar with you or your work. So my first question to you is, what makes you you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Dr. Angela. I was born and raised in the UK, as you can probably tell from my accent. As a small child, I grew up in the historic city of Nottingham, where the tales of Robin Hood and Sherwood Forest sort of enchanted me as a younger boy, and my teachers were amazing, and they led me down this path of reading and the enchantment that books provide. And I used to read a lot, quite fascinated by stories of my childhood sort of authors, and then I decided to write. And then when I sort of started going down this path, and I wrote my first sort of few short stories, and that sort of got me hooked into more. And then I showed it to some friends and family. They said, "Hey, this is good stuff, keep going." And that's how I sort of started writing. And obviously, you put your heart into writing, and if people, do appreciate or like your stories, then that inspires you to keep going. And that's how it sort of led me to write my first book and get it published through Author House.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. And it's always great when you can connect a place to something in your life personally. It makes the story come alive, if you will. So I definitely understand that. Now, being an author, is that something that you have always wanted to do, or did you find that life finally presented the opportunity and you were able to take advantage of it?
To be honest with you, I didn't actually plan out to be an author from day one. I did a variety of jobs. I worked in a bank. I worked in an insurance company. I became a driving instructor. But always back in the deep, sort of in the back of my mind, I don't know. I mean, I'm a Capricorn star sign, so Capricorns are quite sort of fluent in writing, and they have sort of good imaginations. And I always sort of in the back of my mind, deep in my heart, I had this desire. I've had so many stories in my life that have inspired me, that have happened to me, and I'd like to share those stories with other people. And that sort of kept on nagging at me until I sort of picked up a pen and said, okay, let's just write something down. And in my sort of mid-30s, I picked up a laptop and I started typing, and it sort of just clicked together from there. And I wrote 1 chapter, 2 chapters, 3 chapters, and it sort of became like a semi-finished novel. And then I gave it to my friends and family. They said, no, you put so much effort, you need to finish this. And that's how I sort of just said, okay. So I devoted 2 years of my life to this book, Believe, and that's how I managed to complete it in the end. But I didn't intend to be a writer from the beginning, but it was always one of my loves, and it sort of followed me around for a long time until I got this book out of my system.
I love that you say, you had to get it out. You had to get it out. And it's like, absolutely, there's no way you can keep all of this to yourself. And shout out to those friends who really know us that say, absolutely, you cannot keep this to yourself. You must share this with the world. Because they see something many times that future readers of the book are going to see. This part here, it's amazing. You really need to get that out there. So good job. I'm glad they encouraged you to do that. Now, the title of your book, I love it. Quite simple, but one very powerful word, Believe. Why was it important to entitle your book, Believe?
Dr. Angela, that's a very good question. a title is what catches the sort of your potential reader's imagination. I mean, if it's a title that clicks with people, or they sort of just catches their eye, then obviously they're going to pick up a book, look at the cover, look at the blurb at the back, and maybe end up sort of being buying it or reading it. Believe is a very powerful word. I mean, as human beings, obviously, we have our own beliefs, things that happen to us, to our families, the struggles that we go through in life. And obviously you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in religion or in God or in your family. So it's quite a powerful word in our lives. You have to believe in something to keep you going through not only just the good times, but always through the sort of difficult times as well. So I mean, it's a word that's sort of renowned with me, and I sort of, just clicked with me and said, for the story, the type of story that I'm writing, this just seemed so right for it, and I sort of said, okay, let's just stick with believe. It can relate to a lot of people out there.
I really like that answer. I really do. We have to believe. I think for so many people, they have lost that sense of hope. That the desire to just keep moving forward, even when not quite sure, to kind of step out in faith. So you are so right there. We have to keep believing. I love it. Now, as far as your writing process was concerned, for many of the authors that I talk with, they had certain things that they needed to happen in order for their writing to be considered successful for that day. They needed peace and quiet. They needed lots of coffee or lots of tea. They needed the environment to be just right. When you were writing, was it important for you to have a certain atmosphere or certain things around you in order for you to be productive in your writing?
Yes, again, Dr. Angela, this is what most writers find very important. You need to have a calm environment where you can sort of, writing comes from the heart as well as the mind. So you need a place where you can sort of reflect upon your emotions, and you find inspiration all around you in the people that are, they're in your life, or you see people walking down the street, or if it's a bright sunny day or a rainy day, or a song that plays in your head, or a movie scene that plays in your head. You pick up inspiration from everywhere. I believe God provides you sort of inspiration, and you need a place where you can just, be by yourself. So I had my laptop in a sort of quiet room. I had a sort of a window overlooking my garden, and the sunlight used to come inside, and that was quite peaceful for me, where I could be alone with just myself and my thoughts. And, I'd gather, everything I had in my mind. Sometimes I'd set myself a target. I'm going to write 50 words today. Sometimes I'd end up writing 500 or 1,000. And it just depended on how much inspiration just flowed through you that day. But definitely, most writers, I would say, would agree, that we need a calm, collective place where we can gather our thoughts and be inspired to write. And I was lucky enough to find that place.
I don't think that many people think about the creative process for authors. I think that many times you think of it when it comes to musicians, because that's something that they say, I went off into the studio, I was away creating music. But I think people forget that writers need to have that as well, to be able to really hear their thoughts and to be able to get the storyline that's in their head, or the poetry or whatever it is that's in their head, onto paper, or into the laptop, I guess, so that they're able to get it out to the rest of us. So it's really important. Thank you for that reminder. Now, one of the things that you talk about is having that spiritual connection. Why do you believe that it is important for us to believe in God, to have that relationship with God? How do you address that in the book?
Thank you, Dr. Angela. It's a very good question again. I believe, as everybody has a right, whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, that is your own individual choice. But, as you go through life, certain things, you witness things, and things happen to your life, to your loved ones and your family. And we all come to that point, where we feel totally alone and powerless. And, when you're in that situation, and if it's just that solitude between yourself and your creator or your Lord, and in those depths of your darkest moments in life, when you actually ask something or ask for guidance or seek prayer or help, and everybody has their own sort of coping mechanism, and everybody sort of picks themselves up, but I do feel many sort of points in my life where sort of I was sort of going through difficult times, and I asked, and I received the sort of answer through one form or another, and that just sort of strengthened me, and I knew that there is somebody out there, there is a higher power out there, my creator or God or my Lord, or however people would address their maker. And I felt that I had, I wasn't alone. I wasn't just like, completely in the dark and nobody would answer me. But, and that's sort of one prayer got answered, and it strengthened me, and then it led to another prayer and another prayer and that sort of my personal faith got strengthened by knowing that I'm not alone, and through our darkest and sort of hardest times in life, all we can do is sort of, ask for guidance, and God does hear us, and we receive it.
I love that. I love that answer. Now, we have about 2 minutes left in this particular segment, but I want to ask you about the proper way to utilize your book. For many authors, they will say, it's best if you read this book from cover to cover, page after page. Others will say perhaps it's more like a devotional, where you should read a page or two, a day, put it down, digest it, think about it, roll it around in your head, if you will. But then others will say it's a chapter book, take in X amount of pages in that chapter in a section and really think about that before moving on. What do you think is the best way to really take in all that you have shared in your book, Believe?
Thank you, Dr. Angela. Again, this is the individual reader's choice. All three methods that you described are all good. It depends on how the reader sort of prefers to read. My personal preference would be to read it chapter by chapter. I mean, I followed some writing, sort of some authors' guides and sort of some authors' recommendations. They said in every chapter, if you leave a hook for the reader, it's like a surprise ending or a surprise sort of something that gets the reader addicted or hooked in every chapter. So they want to lead from one chapter to the next, to the next, to the next. If you put in just a really boring chapter in the middle of your book, and then the reader will say, right, the last chapter was really, really good, interesting, and this one is not really, it's a bit bland. I don't see where the sort of and you lose the reader's interest. So my aim was to keep every chapter lively and interesting for the reader. So he would, okay, I want to read the next one and next one, and you'd slowly build the tension up, like in a good movie, towards the climax of the movie. And that's what I intended to do. So I would say, at least a chapter. My chapters aren't very long. They're maybe about 18, 19 pages per chapter. It's not a very big book, but yeah, I would say request my readers to read at least a chapter, reflect upon it, and then maybe the next day the following chapter. That is my preferred method, and I've tried to build the tension up through the chapters leading towards the climax, and hopefully the readers might enjoy reading that.
Now, see, that's why I asked that question. Because I know that the authors are going to have some type of suggestion there, that it doesn't matter how you read it, or, even if there's a particular instruction. I love asking because you guys wrote the book, and it's always to go best to the source to ask what is the best way to get the most out of the book. And I think that's important. Thank you so much for that. Well, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you please remind everyone, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And how do we stay in contact with you?
Yes, certainly, Dr. Angela. The title of my book is Believe by S.F. Malik, which is myself, Sohail Malik. It's easily available on Amazon as an ebook, and also you can get it in paperback or hardback copy. And Barnes and Noble, I believe, also in the US is available. in the Barnes & Noble website as well. You can type in Believe by SF Malik on Facebook, and you'll be able to follow me there as well. And also on Instagram, SF Malik, Believe by SF Malik again, and it is quite easily available.
Alrighty, everyone, now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is Sohail Malik, and we are talking about his book, Believe. I know, that is such an awesome title for a book and an awesome instruction, Believe. Now, my next question for you is, one of the things that I believe that you talk about or address in the book is children, and how they are, I don't want to say suffering, but that we have so many children that are not in the best condition, right? I guess they are suffering around the world. How do you address that in your book?
Thank you, Dr. Angela. Yeah, this is the whole theme of my book. I mean, it sort of follows these sort of books. If you're familiar with, obviously, the world knows the Hunger Games and so on and so forth. And obviously, unfortunately, we live in a world where children are suffering, even though none of us really want them to suffer. But if you look in war-torn countries or famine-ridden countries around the world, and children seem to go through the hardest and the harshest sort of forms of suffering, for if they don't have food, or they don't have clothes, or they don't have medical supplies, or they're being exploited through sort of child soldiers and child labor and so on and so forth. So, I mean, obviously nobody wants children to suffer anywhere, but I did relate these chapters in my book. I mean, children can go through these sort of horrific things that happen that should never actually happen to them, but you will find they are very resilient. They're resourceful, and even though they don't have the sort of strength of adults in sort of there, but they're very steadfast and they're very sort of forbearing. And whatever you throw at them, you will be surprised that the human spirit is so strong that they can actually endure the worst hardships and still live to be better people, and they can sort of inspire us to be even better. And obviously, hopefully, in my lifetime, or maybe not in my lifetime, but I'd like to see a world where children's suffering ends. No child should be allowed to suffer anywhere, but, maybe not in my lifetime, but in the future, we should all be moving toward a world where children don't have to suffer anymore. And that was sort of the theme of my book as well.
I have to agree with you there. I think that when we see a child suffering, it really pulls at our heartstrings a little bit differently. Many times we can rationalize why an adult might be in a particular situation. Oh, well, you should have gone to, college or university, or you shouldn't have done that stupid thing. You shouldn't have quit your job without having another job first. We can put a reason to why they may be in that situation, but for a child, it's of no fault of their own. So you're right. I think we do have a special place for children in our hearts. And wouldn't that be amazing if we could live in a world where children are all okay, no matter where they live in the world, but that we know that they are taken care of. I agree with you there. That's a great prayer to pray. Now, when it comes to, and you kind of touched on this too, when it comes to poverty, unfortunately, we have a lot of children that are living in a state of poverty. When we think of that, depending on where you live in the world, and we do have an international audience, so everyone may think of that a little bit differently. Here in the States, we have a certain type of poverty, but then you live in another country, and it may be a different level of poverty. Is that something that you address in your book as well? And if so, what are some of your suggestions for dealing with it? If we can't eradicate it within our lifetime, but perhaps in a generation or two, what are your suggestions there?
Thanks, Dr. Angela. Yes, certainly. Poverty obviously exists, unfortunately, in all parts of the world, even in these sort of modern countries that we live in, America, England, Europe, and so on and so forth. Sort of the theme that I touched in my book was because it's dystopian and it's based in the future. So there is a society that actually invents through science and technology machines that run endlessly on a fuel source that's sort of never ending, and they sort of become a society that has eradicated poverty because they have machines that produce food yields and energy yields relentlessly. But the cost and the catch is that you have to convert to their way of thinking and basically preaching and basically taking up the new religion in order to be free from that poverty. And you have to give up all sort of your beliefs or what your forefathers or your parents believed in. If you convert, you will be free from poverty. If you do not convert, then they will confine you with sort of rationing and sort of punishments and things like this that will sort of obviously make your life they sort of push you into a corner where either you convert or you die of hunger. So this was the theme that I touched on in my book. Obviously, you can't really force people to change their religion. That never really happens. People obviously have freedom of choice. But then obviously there was a backlash and a war followed. But unfortunately, the band of believers were the ones that actually lost the battle against the all-powerful empire of the state. And in which turn they sort of introduced this penalty that the firstborn child of every believing family or every believer sort of who were already living in sort of slum towns would become the property of the state on their 17th birthday and would be taken away for a lifetime of servitude and would never be seen again. So obviously this was the theme that I touched on in my book. In regards to your question, Dr. Angela, yes, we can eradicate poverty. We have masses of technology and money and food reserves, but unfortunately the way that we choose to, or governments choose to sort of distribute this among nations is a lot of bureaucracy and politics involved. But I would like to see a world where sort of people put people first and not politics first, and hopefully we in our lifetime or maybe after our lifetimes we can see a world where hunger ends.
And I think that the next generation, our beautiful children that are of because I am now the age of the auntie. I am a parent myself of an adult child. So when I say that the children of, I think that they are doing a really great job. That next generation, our millennials, our Gen Zers, they're doing such an amazing job at speaking up and speaking out and kind of challenging their parents, their grandparents even, to, are we doing all that we can do? Are we being the best that we can possibly be? Now, without putting words into your mouth or anything, and we are on Christian radio, so I challenge everyone to say, are we being the best Christians that we can be? Are we making sure that we are taking care of the least of these, as Scripture reminds us to? So you're right. We do need to make sure that we are doing all that we can to address those things that need to be handled. I love it. Now, there are so many folks in the world that say, you know what? I hear what you guys are talking about. There's always going to be hunger. There's always going to be poverty. There's always going to be bad folk in the world. So what is God doing during this time? We're praying and we're asking and some folks are fasting and believing for things to come true. I know that that's something that you address in your book. How should we address or discuss that with someone who may be kind of on the naysayers side that says, I just don't know if God is hearing our prayers?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Angela. This is it. You see, this is the main sort of some of my friends that I've spoken with or who don't actually believe in God, and their sort of main argument or their main point of view is that, if there is God, then why are people still suffering, and why don't our prayers get answered? And why doesn't he hear the calling of the people? And again, you have to go back to this sort of biblical scriptures and, what God has taught us through the ages. If you look at, the people of Prophet Moses and how, they suffered bondage for, centuries before their call was finally heard. And I believe personally God does hear, but, this life is very temporary, it's very short, and it's just a test from God. So, there are three ways in which our prayers, I believe, can be answered. One is obviously you get an immediate answer straight away. So if you asked for something and you received it, then that's been answered. The second way would be that, if you ask for something, you didn't actually receive it, but God will provided you with some sort of, or protected you from some calamity in its place. Or, so you sort of, you didn't get what you wanted, but you got something that was second, sort of the best thing, the best outcome that could have resulted for your prayer, even though it wasn't exactly what you asked for. So that would be another sort of way that it got answered. And the third possible way is that some prayers obviously don't get answered in this lifetime, but they are kept in like a safety deposit for our afterlife. So either God answers us straight away or saves us from some calamity, or if it doesn't get answered in this lifetime, then obviously I believe that this life isn't the only life, and there is life after death for us as well. And maybe God will give us some sort of recompense or some sort of compensation or some sort of blessing in our afterlife, in the hereafter. Obviously, because I believe that death isn't the end of life in itself. But yes, some prayers do get answered straight away, some don't. But in all ways, you have to believe, and I personally myself believe that God does listen to your prayers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have told people that sometimes it's not that God doesn't answer our prayer, is that we are telling God that we want a particular thing, and that thing isn't what's proper and true for us. Dear God, send me a gray Mercedes. When he's like, that's not what you need. You need a black BMW, or you need a Jeep, or you need a minivan. You need a station wagon, whatever it is, that, and so we need to stop thinking that God isn't answering our prayers. It's just sometimes the answer is something different than what we want, because that isn't the correct thing for us. I love your answer there. I've seen those memes on social media where the person's like, save me, and then they say, well, I sent a boat, I sent a car, I sent a dog, I sent a helicopter, and you still, you didn't pay attention to the fact that I was still trying to rescue you. You were looking for it to come in a particular way, and I think for so many people, that's where they get hung up. They're looking for a certain look, or a certain sound, or a certain thing, and God is giving them the answer, and it's right there in front of them. So thank you. I love your answer. Well, you know what? I have so enjoyed my time with you here today, and we could just go on and talk for hours, but unfortunately we are out of time. But I can say that I would love to have you back on the show to spend some more time with you, and for you to definitely tell us more about your book, because I love your perspective and how you're sharing it with the world. So before I let you go, can you please remind everyone one last time, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Thank you, Dr. Angela. Yes, certainly. My book is called Believe by S.F. Malik. You can just Google it up, Believe by S.F. Malik, or Barnes & Noble and Amazon will readily have copies available. And likewise, it was a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you again for being a guest on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. And listeners, thank you for spending time with us here as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend it here with me today. Thank you for spending some time with me. As always, I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you to be your best. May the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on the show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about the book Little Talk with the Lord. Its author is Marie Jean-Pierre, and I'm really excited to have her on the show today. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Marie. Thank you for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Good afternoon, Dr. Angela. How are you doing this afternoon?
Thank you so much for being on the show. Now, as is tradition here, we always start off our program with a little bit of bio talk, and that is we ask, could you tell us a little bit about who you are? What has made you the person that you are today?
Well, yes, my name is Marie Antoinette Jean-Pierre Telegene. I'm from Cap Haitian, Haiti, but I came to America when I was 12 years old. I'm a preschool teacher. I'm an international police chaplain. I'm also a minister.
Now, my next question for you is about being an author. Is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that life simply presented this opportunity to you and you were able to share your work with the rest of the world?
Yes, I always wanted to be a book author. I wrote this book back in 2004. Little Talk with the Lord. The Lord was the one that inspired me to write this book. I have a lot of nice things on the book. My favorite one was 7 Keys to Deliverance. It's a prayer and fasting for 7 days. Each day is a key. The first day is forgiveness. The first day, all you do, you start praying from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Not 6 a.m.
That sounds like it would be so interesting. Now, I don't mean to cut you off. I just don't want you to, tell too much about your book before we have an opportunity to introduce this book to to our audience. Okay, so with that being said, the title of your book, Little Talk with the Lord. How did you come about that title?
Well, I used to fast almost every month until one day I said, a little talk with the Lord. I keep saying it to myself. And then I said, you know what? Lord, I want to write a book about it. And then the Lord inspired me to write the book titled A Little Talk with the Lord.
I like that. And I think that most of us need to have a little talk with the Lord every day. So I can definitely understand that. Now, as far as the ideal reader is concerned, I know that for many people, when they're writing a book, their idea is, I want to share this with moms, or I wrote this book for people that are caregivers that's going through a similar situation. many people write devotionals where they just want to inspire people day by day. What is the ideal, or who, I'm sorry, is the ideal reader for your book? Is your book appropriate for someone as young as our teenagers, like our high schoolers, or do you suggest that perhaps they should be older than college age?
Okay, well, it's for everybody. It's even for a young child.
Mm-hmm.
It's for everybody. Because cause there's something in there for a 4-year-old, 10-year-old. Also, a preacher can use that book to preach. Because there's a lot of nice things in the book.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of nice things. So they can use it to preach. They can use it to, if you feel discouraged, if you feel depressed, there's also thing in there for them too. They can read it.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you have a particular thing that really prompted you or kind of pushed you to get out there and write the book? I know that with many authors, they share their story because something has happened to them, and they say, I have to share this story. Someone has got to read about what has happened or how I became unstuck or, made it through. Did you have a particular prompting or something that said, now is the time for this book?
Well, just like I said before, I wrote the book in 2004, but I never really did nothing with it. So I put it out again 2021.
I think that for many of the books that we have, there's nothing wrong with putting out an additional edition of the book. That's a little bit more popular, that you go in and republish that. So I definitely understand. I have a workbook that I have done the same thing with, and just had to switch it up because time passed. When people are dealing with different things and different perspective, different points of view that you're able to add or take away. So I definitely understand there. Now, as far as coping with stress, that is one of the things that you talk about. How do you cope with stress before and after writing a book? Like, you're trying to put it all together, and we have to deal with life that's still going on. Your family still needs you. Your responsibilities are still there. How did you deal with the stress of putting it all together or keeping it all together?
How do I keep it all together for the book?
So my next question for you is about dealing with the stresses of being an author. How did you cope with the stress of both during the writing process as well as after the book has been published? There's still certain responsibilities that you have both as you as an individual but also as an author. How did you deal with those stresses?
Well, the first thing that I do, I just take it to my Father. I pray, and I say, Lord, please help me, because we know that we serve a big God. He's always there. Whatever you ask in Jesus' name, He always answers. So I always pray and ask God for direction.
I think that is always definitely a good idea, and we have to remember to, in my opinion, that we should do that more often. I think so many times people depend on their own understanding, and that they don't take it to God at all, or they make God them. They think that just because they pause and say, what should I do? They give themselves their own answer. And it's like, yep, that's what God told me to do. And it's like, really? Did God really tell you to do that? Or was that just you? So you're right. We do need to pause and really spend time in prayer and ask God to direct us and lead us. Now, when you first held a copy of your finished work in your hands. So you have gone through the process of writing, you've had it edited, you have the cover, you've sent it off to the publisher, you now are holding your finished work in your hands and it is ready to be sold to the general public. Little talk with the Lord, you're looking at it. How does that feel in that moment, Marie?
Well, I was very excited because when they called me and told me that my book was ready, because I've been waiting for so long, when they said, Marie, your book is ready, And the day that I received that book, I was like, hallelujah, praise the Lord. I was very excited about it. I was very excited. I was happy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think about that moment with myself, and it's just like, oh my goodness, it's here. You are so right that it's like, wow, I did it, and it's like, thank God this has actually come to fruition. It is a very exciting moment. Now, your book talks about the 7 keys in deliverance. Someone may not be familiar with that phrase that you use there. What do you mean by the 7 keys in deliverance?
Okay, 7 keys of deliverance. It's a prayer and fast for 7 days. Each day represents a day. Each keys represent a day. Like for instance, the first day is all about forgiveness. The first day is started from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. We have the instruction in the book. The first day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. You said at 6 o'clock, 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m., and then 6 p.m. It's a prayer and fast. Like me, whenever I'm going through a hard time, I just do I just take the 7 keys, and each day is a key. The first one could be, the first one is forgiveness. The second one could be repentance. It could be faith. It depends on you. But each day is a key.
I like how you've broken it up into a 24-hour period, that you can be inspired by. Okay, so today is day number 2. I know that when I'm starting something new, and especially something that's different and new, then I like to start it on a Monday, just because I think so many people are used to a traditional work week, and they think, okay, Monday is the first day. And getting through that, if I can do Monday, then that means I can get to Wednesday, which means I can get to Friday, which means I can get to Sunday. So I like that you've put it into those very bite-sized pieces, as opposed to making it something very big and making it, which can be very overwhelming for so many people. I really like that. Now, as far as utilizing the 7 keys, would you say that in reading the book that we should, absorb all of it, read the entire book, and just do just make a note of it along the way? Or should we kind of also read the book day by day and try to absorb as much as we can on that one day, get that into our spirit before we move on to the next key or move on to the next chapter?
Well, you can do it day by day, but the 7 keys in deliverance, you can read it too, but it's really, just like I said earlier, it's a prayer and fast. And there's a lot of things you have to do. There's a lot of things you can do and you cannot do. Like, for instance, you cannot eat a lot. Like, you have to eat very light after 6 p.m. If you're diabetic, you can drink water all day, drink juice. But you can eat light at 6 p.m. But you can start the fast also any day. You can start on Sunday if you want. You can start on Monday. You can start on Wednesday, whatever day. But just make sure you do it for 7 days. I had a friend of mine. I told her about 7 keys in deliverance. She did it. And let me tell you, she was dating this guy. And this guy was like, well, I never been with no woman. I am this, that. And then what happened, like my friend, she got pregnant. So when she got pregnant, she came to me. She was crying. I offered that to her, the prayer and fasting to her. And she did it. I'm telling you, the 6th day, somebody came to her and told her that the guy was married. The person even gave her the guy address. You see, so there's one thing I can say, there's power in prayer. When you come to God and pray, especially the 7 days thing, it's really big. Just like I said earlier, whatever I'm going through, I always do the 7-day prayer. It's a prayer and fast.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so sorry to hear about what happened to her, but at the same time, thank God she found out what was going on with him, and she was able to get herself out of
Mm-hmm.
that situation. So,
Yeah.
absolutely, I don't think that people really understand how important prayer is, and but more importantly, how powerful prayer is. And prayer really does, and I know it sounds like a meme or it's very cliche, but prayer really is powerful. And we have to respect the power of prayer and not think that God doesn't listen to our prayers, or that he's not paying attention to us when we petition him, especially when we are fasting and praying. So you are so right there. Well, Marie, it is time for us to go to break, but before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
So if you can get my book at Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. You can email me. My email address is biblojp@gmail.com, or you can contact me on my cell, 561-502-8757. 561-502-8757.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Marie Jean-Pierre, and we're talking about her book, Little Talk with the Lord. I know, such an awesome title. I love it. I love it. Now, one of the things that many times as an author, especially when it's our first book or even our second book, there are things that we learn along the way that we didn't know, of course, prior to starting the project. Is there any piece of advice that you wish that you would have known before you started down the journey of becoming an author, that you could share that tidbit of wisdom with someone else who is now an aspiring author?
Well, what I wanted to say about that, I know everybody has a story. Everybody has a story they can tell. They can either do it, do a video, and they can write a book. Okay? Like on my book, I have my testimony. I explain exactly from A all the way to Z. I explain a lot about myself in my book. So you can always be an author if you want to, if you want to write a book. All you got to do, just ask God, and God will inspire you to write your own book.
I tell you, God is so amazing in that we are all inspired to do what we've been called to do, right? Um, for so many folks, it's like, well, some people are doing the same thing. Dr. Angela, you're not the only person on the radio. There's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of radio platforms, and you're not the only one doing it. So what makes yours so special? And I know that's one of the questions that I ask the authors. What makes your book so special? I know that for my radio program, what makes mine special is that God gave me this one. Like we have to be responsible for the gift that God gives to us and make sure that we are tending to it and being a good shepherd, the way that God intended for us to take care of it. So that's my question for you, Marie, is that for someone who says, I like your book or what you're telling me about it, but what makes your book so special? How would you answer that person? What makes your book special or different or unique?
Well, the name alone say it all. A little talk with the Lord.
So spending that time with God, that it's all about that quiet time with Him.
Yes.
I definitely understand that. Now, for so many of our authors out there, they really were in a conundrum. They were trying to figure out, how do I get this book published? Do I do it myself? Do I utilize professionals and pay them for that service? Each one has its pros and cons. I've heard authors say, using a publishing house is expensive, but I got what I paid for. Others will say, I wanted to use self-publishing because I didn't want people to change my story. Like, this is my personal story, and I didn't want people to edit it, or I didn't want my illustrations changed, whatever it is. How did you determine which way to publish your book, and why was it the most appropriate choice for you?
Well, I can tell you at first what I did. I went to Office Depot and I did a lot of copies, and then I stapled it. I think I was like, wow, Marie, come on, let's make that book professional because it's a nice book. That's when that's when I decided. I said, well, that's a good idea. And then I got in touch with a publisher company. And then, but it's very expensive. I spent so much money because before it was in color, everything was color. It was so much money. Then I had to wait for like few years. Then I said, about if we do it black and white. So I did it black and white. So now it's cheaper because the book, a small book in color, they were selling it $45. Just for one copy. And I was like, how I'm going to sell a little small book like this just because it's in color for $45? I said, there's no way. I'm not even going to make not even 1% out of the money, that I spend. So just when I asked them, is it possible I can make it black and white? They say, okay, I can do the inside black and white, and then the front page can be in color. And it went from $45 to like 15, 10, 20.
And I don't think that people realize that every part of a book has a cost associated with it. I know that many times we jokingly laugh that when we are talking to an attorney, or we're spending time with our doctors or with a therapist or counselors, we say, time is money, and people understand that. And it's like, yes, we do have 15-minute billable hours. And for some people, it's even 10 or 12 minutes. But the thing is that people don't tend many times to think about, when you're putting a product out there, that every little piece has a cost associated with it. And we, as the producer of that material, we are mindful of the cost, and that you do have to talk to your publishing house many times and say, I want to make this affordable so that more people can get to it. There are some books that 1,000%, I agree with you, must be in color. Like those coffee table books of beautiful locations, absolutely color all the way. But when it's more print, you're right. We do need to be mindful that so that we can share our work with more people. Now, for someone who is trying to operate or function in what you believe God has called you to do, I think many people are trying to operate that way. This is what God has purposed for me, and I want to be the best I can at it. What does it look like to you to be a successful writer? I know for many people, when we're talking about success in general, it means, the big car, or a big house or a fancy car, or you have, red bottom shoes, whatever material thing it is. But many times with authors, it's not the same type of thing. They're looking for a different something that to them validates their hard work and sharing of their story. So that's my question for you, Marie. What does a successful writer look like to you?
Well, successful writer that's when that's when you sell over 1 million books, a lot of books. Once you have a chance to sell a lot of your book, I mean, that means, like you're successful. But when the book just sit there really doing nothing, you're not really.
And it's so interesting that you say that, because I have not necessarily talked to these people on radio, but in general, I love going to book expos, be it that I am one of the author vendors that are there, or I'm simply going to find and really my next amazing book to read myself. One of the things that I have found is that for some people, their goal is to make that list. They want to sell 1 million books, or they want to be on the New York bestseller list, or perhaps they want to be on their hometown's book club list, or whatever it is, But then I've also talked to people that will say, if I just help one person understand that they can get unstuck or move through it, then yay, thumbs up, then that's a success. So you're so right. Success means so many things to so many different people, and I love asking that question, because you never know what someone is going to say. And I tell you, there are a few people that have made that list of selling that many books, and I'm sure that is an amazing, amazing feeling. And to this day, I am glad to say that the Bible is still the #1 best-selling book.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Marie Jean-Pierre, for spending time with me here today and telling us about your book, Little Talk with the Lord. I appreciate your being on. Now, before I let you go, though, if you can remind everyone one last time, title of your book, where can we get a copy, and, of course, how can we stay in contact with you?
Okay, you can get it at Amazon and most of the bookstore. You can email me at biblojp@gmail.com. We also have a website. It is valleyofloveministries.org. Or you can contact me on my cell, 561-502-8757.
Thank you again, Marie, for being a guest here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. And listeners, thank you for spending time with us here as well. We hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you today to be your best. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone.